the first person on the far end of the table is Sara Siestreem, who is an amazing painter and also makes lovely traditional baskets, and has mastered a lot of media, so she's really interesting to talk to. The next person is Corwin Clairmont, and he's from Salish Kootenai she's Ann's Kunis, and from Southern Oregon, and Hannah's Koo. Yeah, I always get that backwards. And he's from the Salish Kootenai Res in Montana, so he had the longest trip, and by miles. And he's one of the great conceptual artists in the country. Just amazing work. Also, an incredibly gifted printmaker. And then next to Corky is Wendy Red Star, who is a delicious installation artist. Really delicious work. Wonderful use of materiality, and really good with fibers, which of course makes me exquisitely excited every time I see her work. And then John Feodorov, who also is an amazing installation artist, performance artist, and who was part of the first Art 21 series. All of these guys have got a ton of awards, and their bios are online with the announcement for this event. So hopefully you've all read their bios, because they're amazing, and there are also links to their websites, and so you can check them out, because there's a lot to check out. Wendy, for instance, curated this amazing show at Bumbershoot, and it was just totally exciting artists, Native American artists from all over the place, including my friend Scanawata Fragito. Just incredible people who are doing all kinds of cutting edge work in virtual reality and just really interesting stuff on computer and all kinds of things. So, it's like between the four of them, there's a lot they can discuss. They're gonna start, we'll start with Sara and work our way down the table, by talking about their own work for 15 minutes, so that you will get to see what their work looks like. And then they're going to have a conversation about Native American art and what's important about it, and what contemporary Native Americans are saying with their work as we march on into the 21st century. So I hope that you will enjoy this, because there's a lot to learn. Thank you.
Thank you, Gail. Hello, everybody. Evergreen, thanks for coming today. It's a huge honor. Can you guys help me, tech people, like this? Oh, you did, thanks. It's a huge honor to come up here and be with you today. I saw some artists in the group, I can tell you, because you have paint on your pants, which is always fun to see. Because as Gail mentioned, I'm a painter. So first up, I'm a Hanuskous tribal member, which is a group on the south coast of Oregon. I grew up between the lower Umpqua River Valley and Portland, Oregon. This is an example of my painting. It's maybe in real life half the size of this, which is still really big for a painting. This one's called Hanuskous. All of my work is process-based, which means that it kind of has to do with the act of getting there. And my paintings end up as abstract landscapes. So this is oil on paper. I'll move on to the next part of my work. So as Gail mentioned, I'm a multidisciplinary artist. I work in paint. I also work in photography, printmaking, sculpture, and most recently, traditional weaving. the weaving practice is, I'm an artist educator as well as activist stuff, and so, and all of those disciplines work together and come out in the work that I make, that I display in the art discourse. And so the work that I'm doing in weaving is probably in the last 3 or 4 years. I started following the traditional weaving kind of education path, and in an effort to reactivate the practice for my tribe. I mentioned I'm from the South Coast, so the Coos people were hit by the US government really hard in the 1850s, 1860s, and a lot of our cultural practices began to hibernate at that point, and our focus was on survival. And so in my generation, we are working to reactivate a lot of that lifestyle. And so weaving, being an artistic discipline, was something that I could focus on my next phase of my education. And so the byproducts of that work are something that I'm using in public. But the bigger piece is that I'm doing this research and education project for my tribe. So I'm creating education tools around the practice for my community, and then we're working as a group to reactivate within our generations that are existing now. So this piece is called Days and Days. It is a combination of photographs. So the cells that are color in this grid are in-process weaving materials. So those are spruce root bundles. So spruce root is one of the materials that my group has a really strong power history with. So a lot of our baskets are made of that. So these cells are a cache of spruce root that I dug for my group that are seasoning, and so the next year all of my tribal members will be making baskets out of these spruce root bundles. The black and white cells are a continuation of my work with Xerox that I've done prints with in the past. So I'll take in-process weaving and put it in the Xerox machine and create these prints. And so I'm combining these together to create kind of a insight to this moment in our culture. So this is a monolithic print. It's probably, I'd say about 10 feet tall and about 25 feet long. It's installed in the Portland Art Museum right now. And then there's a symbolic breakdown that goes into each of the striations. So there's a real geologic reference in this work because of the large scale of it, but also in the way that it's organized. So each of the striations in this piece have kind of a metaphoric implication that is contained in a document. Like I said, this is at the Portland Art Museum, and the auxiliary materials that go with it are housed in that archive. So if you want to, when you have more time, go and look at that. You can see what I'm talking about with all of those pieces. The title I will break down for you though. So Days and Days is a reference to all time. So the political end of this is multi-layered, but that particular component is a reference to my teachers. So I'm studying weaving in Portland with Grand Ronde and Chinook folks. So Greg Archuleta, who is a Grand Ronde tribal member, and Greg Robinson, who's a Chinook Nations tribal member, are my teachers. And those are both tribes that have a historic and contemporary presence in Portland where we live. And I think it's really important for people to recognize whose house they're at and who is still all around them. And so when I say days and days, I'm speaking to all time. So in history, but also in the contemporary dialogue. So it's in order to recognize them in that location. So there's so much more to this piece, and I would encourage you to please go read the document. But for our conversation today, I'll keep moving. So this installation that I have at the Portland Art Museum is 3 pieces. It's a group show I have with my 2 teachers right now, and the other 2 pieces that I'm going to share with you are part of that. So this next piece is called Cache 3 for Crowns and Medicine. So what you see here is 4 different plant materials. So the first batch that's on that far side, those are cattail. The middle section is red cedar bark. And then on the far end here, there's pearly everlasting and mugwort. So to break down those materials, The first piece, the cattail, or what my group, what we use for our fancy hats, our regalia. In Western terms, that would be considered a crown. The second piece is the red cedar bark, which is what my two teachers' groups, their fancy hats are made of. And then the two medicinal plants, the pearly everlasting, which is an antihistamine, and the mugwort, which is what my group would use in place of a sage and a smudge. So it's to bring clarity, to ask bad things to leave. So the combined implication of this work is a couple different things. So one, I've been displaying these caches of weaving materials in public a lot lately, and I'm doing it to exert living culture, which is a really cool political term about Indigenous life, saying that we're here, we're alive, and we're doing our stuff. I live with these weaving materials in my home, and there's a certain power with the beauty and sophistication of their presence that I wanted to share with the mainstream. The second piece of the political bent on doing this is about appropriation of space. So, you know, Indigenous people in the US government, there's some land stuff going on, has been for a long time. And so this is a way for me to use public land for my needs. Right now, these weaving materials are seasoning. They're doing work right now. They're getting ready to become, they're getting ready to be woven with. And so they're actively doing something that's living. The other thing that's happening here is that they are teaching about these things I'm talking about in public, whether it's subliminal or active. And so they are working right now in public, because everyone who comes into the exhibition, whether they are understanding fully what they're experiencing, they're embedding, and the materials are getting embedded with their moment of awakening. So there's those things that are happening. The medicinal plants are included for as an act of respect to Greg Archuleta's desire that the olfactory presence and part of Indigenous culture was present in our exhibition. And so it's to honor his request, but it's also for the space and the things that we're trying to have happen there. Antihistamine, so when you encounter an allergy, it's irritating to your system. And so in this exhibition, we're doing a lot of things that create cognitive dissonance. And so it's in order to help with that, and for the people who are on the represented side to kind of honor us and to help us in this space. The sense of these things are subtle, but they're present, and that's really important to me. There's another pushback with the institution and the political stuff here. So to bring in live things into an institution, an old school institution, is really nerve-wracking for people who, archivist type people who are worried about bugs, bless you, and things like that. And so it was a move to request to put these things in there. And it's safe for the bugs. All of these materials have lived in the sun a lot. They were in my home. They've off-gassed any particular bugs that might have come in with them. And not to mention that every time you come into a space, you're probably bringing a ladybug with you. You might be bringing something else. So there's a living cultural thing going on here that is a political move asking the institution to honor this. So they did. So that's cash for crowns and medicine. And the last piece I'll share with you, oh good, I'm right on time. The last piece I'll share with you is another part of my installation, and this is called Basket Family Inventory. So as I mentioned, I'm new to the weaving practice. So to display this developmental work in public is tricky, because we have so many living, exceptional weavers that we should be looking at to understand what weaving is really about at its highest level. And so it's really important when I show this and talk about it that it's understood that these are evidence of education and development and learning. I'm sorry, what? Oh, okay. So each of these baskets are models and design efforts where I'm trying to find and deconstruct or re-engineer or reverse engineer existing baskets from my culture or my teachers' cultures, and they combine complex narratives of how they came to be. So a basket is, you've got the plants growing in the natural environment, there's the day that you gather them, there's the processing that goes on at all the different stages, and then there's the making of the basket, and then there's what the basket does after that. And so it's this really kind of beautiful long narrative, and each one of these is embedded with all of those kinds of properties, as well as all of the things that, the conversations that can be generated out of them. So this is a combination of 15 baskets. There's another one that isn't shown in this image that's on the wall. So right here there's 14, but there's a 15th. And they're just to display this effort of reconstruction. So yeah, I will leave it with that. I know that's been a lot of fast talking. Are there any questions you guys want to get off your chest right away before we go into the next? Okay, thank you.
Yes, Gracias. My name is Corky Clairmont, and it's really an honor and privilege to be here. And I thank Gail and for the invite here, and all the staff that were here putting things together this morning. Raul really is an amazing guy. You know, he put everything in order for me so I could do a PowerPoint and not just throw a bunch of random images out there. This project you're looking at, I did in China just a couple weeks ago, and this is a bamboo forest. I was over there with a group of artists from the United States, and they're connected with a group called 188 Art, which is a group of people in China, in Shanghai, China, that are promoting contemporary art, especially in China. And it was a great time. But they took us to these different locations, and we had opportunities to do work or just hang out and enjoy the location or place. I'd never been in a bamboo forest, so it was just fun to just hang around there. And then they said, well, I'm here, so I need to do something here. So I had this drawing paper, and it wasn't great quality, but it kind of served the purpose. So I selected 12 bamboo, and I did these rubbings on the bamboo. To give some kind of continuity, I counted 10 rings up, bamboo rings, and began the rubbing. And let's see if I can just go to the next slide. So this is the rubbings, and you notice each sheet of paper has this cutout on it. Well, that's the floor of the bamboo. I actually took the plant material that was on the ground, and I used that as the source to rub the bamboo. So it's total organic. And here you see little cutouts of the paper. And so by doing the paper cutouts, I was just giving another identification means to the paper, but also to the bamboo. So each bamboo has its own little thing going on. But it's just fun being there. You can see the kind of misty, kind of foggy deals. So these little cutouts were left on the bamboo. Had this little tape that I double-sided and then just stuck it on the bamboo where the cutout was made. So there's 12 bamboos with the little cutouts. I'm sure the bamboo really appreciated my leaving it there, but they didn't complain. And I also went to this beautiful lake area. And it's this particular area is out of Shanghai, and it's famous for Chinese poets and writers that these are been coming to this place for hundreds and hundreds of years. And so I did some rubbings off the trees that was there. And kind of left a little piece at the tree. So the paper that I cut the piece out of and did the rubbing on, I brought that back with me. It was kind of a fun thing to do. This next series of works is a commentary on the tar sands development out of Fort McMurray, Canada. Some of you may be familiar with that development. And so I did a series of prints you see in the shape of this arrow, double-sided arrow. And these arrows is what you see when you're on the road and you come to an intersection that dead ends. You see this arrow that you have to go right or left. So it's about the same size as that arrow, and I use that as kind of a format. And the images that are printed, they're printed on rice paper. So I did a series of prints on rice paper, and I started at the Missoula Art Museum in Missoula, Montana, and I traveled from there to Fort McMurray, stopping every 50 miles and leaving one of these prints. And this particular print I left near Flathead Lake, on the edge of Flathead Lake. And I shot photographs of the four directions. So that's what you're seeing here. And here you see the half of the print. And this is the part that I left at the site. And I took the part that I tore off. I brought that back with me. And what you see stationed around the medicine wheel there are the little gummy bears that some of you might be munching on. And so these are different sites that I left the images at. And this is one of the last sites that I left images at, and this is at Fort McMurray itself, in a little park that was created close to the area where they were mining the tar sands. So it's a little more, whoops, this is the one I should be talking about. It's a little more elaborate, but I wanted to highlight the four directions. Fort McMurray is that the community is on the largest inland delta on the continent, which means it's a source for the whole continent in terms of water. And so what you see in the background here is a huge pond that was created through the development of the tar sands. And I was working on this last piece. Every so often I'd hear this huge explosion. And I later asked about it. They said, well, that's a cannon that goes off so the birds don't light in the water, because the water is so toxic, the birds just die, And they had little floating scarecrows, and floating around in these ponds too, that hopefully deter some of the birds from lighting in there. So these next images are just images that I took when I was in Fort McMurray. I chartered this little plane and I flew over the tar sands development site. And this site is over 50 miles in square miles. These are what they call the man camps, where the workers stay. And this is some residue from the development of the oil. It's big sulfur platforms or pyramids that are created. There's no liners, in these huge ponds that have been created, so all the stuff, just goes into the aquifer. And it's really created some issues, with residents of the community, especially tribal people. They're getting melanomas and all kinds of cancers related to pollution. And they can't eat the fish anymore because they're all full of stuff, and they have lesions and things that are growing on them that shouldn't be there. And the deer are having problems that way, and all the animals. And it's right next to the huge, huge rivers, you know, that flow through that area. So you know this stuff's going in there. But unless you go up there and see it, you don't realize what's going on. You know, it's just unbelievable. It's hard to explain. But it really impacted me. Little gummy bears I was putting out, you know, because I jumped on a tour bus, a company tour bus, Suncor tour bus, and they're driving around the sites, you know, the company sites, and the lady that was conducting the tour said, "Oh," she got on the bus and says, "Oh," kind of excited, you know, "I noticed somebody was photographing gummy bears." You know, those things that you guys are eating. And, well, did you know that the Suncor Corporation furnishes the lubricant to the gummy bear company so they don't stick together? I had no idea. I've eaten those gummy bears too, so a couple of them probably okay, but you don't have to overdo it. I know some of your hungry students, but don't eat too many of them. So that was really insightful. But the concept, you know, with the gummy bears, the reason I've used them as kind of a metaphor, when they're working the site up there, you know, it displaces all the animals if it doesn't kill them off, as well as all the vegetation. And there was an article that came out that mentioned that there was some 300 or 150, I guess, black bears, you know, that were destroyed in a real short period of time because of the development up there. So I used the bear as kind of a metaphor in relationship and honoring the loss of our relations' life. This last piece that I'm showing you is located outside of our tribal complex, and I was asked by the tribe to design something that would honor our warriors. And this piece that you're looking at, the teepee poles are some 65 feet high, and the monument itself, the granite monument, is about a little over 10 feet high. These are images on the monument that represent our community and our stories and our land. And there's no guns or battleships or anything like that on it. It's more of our community welcoming home our veterans and thanking them for their service. And the images that you see are images that are important to our community that talk about why we defend our tribal communities, our nations, our people, our lands. I had to throw that in there. That's me if you had trouble recognizing it. And that's it. Any questions? One other item, but come up and get one of these later. This is something I did after I was gone for some time. I took our entire Treaty of Hellgate establishing our reservation, and I copied it. And I put it on this piece of paper. You fold it up, and it's about the size of a credit card. So we call this our gold card. It's a very important document that preserves our tribal community, or helps. But anyway, I have one for everybody, so if you've never read a treaty, this is one for you.
Thank you.
I think it's good. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming out. I want to say thank you to Gail. I'm a huge fan of your work. Really, truly honored when you contacted me to be in the Contemporary Native Group exhibition. And it's an honor to be here to speak on the panel today. I feel like really jittery because I had some really strong coffee at the Longhouse not too long ago, and but you know, we've got 15 minutes, which I'm going to try to blow by really quickly. So I think that will help me. But also, this has kind of been kind of a weird week because John Trudell passed away, and he was a really huge influence on me. So I've been really kind of reflecting and thinking about him and some of the words that he's that have really stood out to me. So I've been thinking a lot about him and political activism, and so I don't know. It's kind of a big hit to lose someone such a brilliant and important person to the Native community. So I was just kind of thinking about him, but. What I wanted to focus on is the work that I've been doing the past 2 years, and I've done quite a bit of work. I'm originally from Montana, from the Crow Indian Reservation. I went to Montana State University-Bozeman, and I got a B.F.A in sculpture, and then I went to UCLA and got an M.F.A in sculpture. But really was influenced by all the photo grad students. So I do a lot of photography in my work, but I'm always thinking in 3D. So I carry that along with me. But the other kind of really major thing, besides what influences my work, which is my cultural background, where I come from, and kind of wanting to decode that, which ends up having me ask more questions, basically, is that I'm a mother to an 8-year-old, an awesome 8-year-old, and I'm a single parent. So that's been kind of the struggle. You work a full-time 40-hour-a-week job, and then you're also a full-time mother, and you have an art career. There's a whole sort of struggle. So I wanted to focus on this kind of amazing thing that's happened to me over the past 2 years, where I've started to collaborate with my 8-year-old. And it's been a really interesting journey, and it's happened very organically, and it's really kind of ignited and excited me. And I think I used up like 5 of my minutes already. So I wanted to talk about the first collaboration, which happened at the Portland Art Museum last year in December. It opened up, and it was called Medicine Crow and the 1880 Crow Peace Delegation. And here is Medicine Crow. I know, he's super handsome. So my thing is that ever since I left the Crow Indian Reservation, Medicine Crow has appeared to me in various places. And he's a Crow chief. I know descendants of Medicine Crow. There's streets named after him on my reservation, and he's one of my favorite chiefs. And he was a visionary. But the thing is that I would see him on like books like this, like Indian Spirit. This was just not too long ago when I visited Dartmouth. He was on the bargain book table. And when I was in graduate school at UCLA, I'd go to Whole Foods, not because I had the money to really, but that was the only grocery store we had there. And I would go and get Honest Tea because he was on there. And it was one of these images. So I've run into him, and I started thinking, I need to get to the bottom of this. People are using his image, and they probably don't even know who he is. They know he's a Native American. They might not even know what tribe he is. So I asked a deeper question, like, who is Medicine Crow? Well, not me, but to tell people who Medicine Crow is, and then what happened when he sat down and had these photographs taken of him. So what I discovered was that he and 6 other Crow chiefs went to Washington, D.C. in 1880. The government was trying to put the Pacific Railroad through a large chunk of our territory, And they basically traveled over there. They had all these weird experiences. They took them to the zoo. They held them there for 30 days. They made sure to show the chiefs all their military, and that was the common tactic. They'll show you all their military so that you know when you go back home that there's no chance for you. So there was those tactics, and also keeping them there for 30 days was so they'd get homesick and they'd just sign whatever they wanted. So that was something that I thought was really interesting. And then as part of that, the chief photographer of the Bureau of Indian Affairs took these photographs. So that was what was happening. It was a major thing. And as part of that research, I sort of broke down each of the chiefs' sort of history, what their outfit represents. One of the things I always love talking about is you see the two kind of bows that are on his hair. They're called hair bows. And what he's saying to you when he wears these two hair bows is that he had to overcome an enemy and slice their throat. So he's basically walking around saying, I'm a throat slicer, you know, but you would never know that. So those are the things that I wanted to point out. So there's details about that. And basically, their fancy outfits, they all mean something very courageous that they did. So to wear the ermine fur meant that they had to either capture a gun or touch an enemy, or if they have it on their legs, that meant that they captured a horse. So all this really important stuff that they are letting you know, like their rank and who they are and how they became a chief. The other things is I just would let people know who their descendants are now. A lot of them were visionaries, like Medicine Crow was able to see helicopters. He saw a train before he ever rode on the train, and then he rode the train to Washington, D.C. Thought that was pretty incredible. So that was really kind of important, and I wanted to humanize these. But while I was doing this, I had this 8-year-old coming up to me, and I made a bunch of Xerox copies of these, and she wanted to engage, and I was like, really have to get this done. Why don't you just take this stack, and I'll see you later. And she did, and I kind of forgot about it. I was working away, and this is what she came back with. And I was blown away. I was like, this is how I closed this exhibition. This is full circle. I hadn't quite worked it all the way out, and this was it. I was like, this is the next generation. This is what's important for me to pass on to her, and for her to have her own kind of mark and take on it. So I decided I'm going to take her really seriously, and she's going to be in this exhibition with me. So I printed out better quality images, got her all set up, and then she basically went to town. And then we had our opening at the Portland Art Museum. There's maybe like 100 people that showed up. And she talked. And I have no idea what she's going to say, but she did an excellent job. And she wanted to talk about a couple pieces, her own, of course, and she had to have her own wall, which, of course, she should have her own wall. And then there was a body of work where I took Medicine Crow's drawings that when he went to the zoo, of the zoo animals, and I found a company in Australia that takes children's drawings, not saying that his drawings are children's drawings, but they take those drawings and turn them into 3D stuffed animals. So she wanted to talk about those pieces. And then we took her class because it was in November by then, it was Native American Heritage Month. And I said, well, here's an opportunity. Let's take your entire class and see the exhibit. And she ran the whole show. So she wanted to talk. I couldn't say anything. So this is her in her class talking about her work. And she talked about my work. And it was this really incredible experience. So I had an opportunity to work with the Seattle Art Museum for one of their remix events. Have any of you guys been to one of those remix events? Anybody? Yeah? Yeah, they're pretty crazy. I wasn't aware of like how much of a party and like lots of drinking it is. So that was really crazy. But at the time they had this Indigenous Beauty exhibition which showcased the Diker collection. And basically, that was it. The Dikers collect these really beautiful Native American objects, and that was pretty much it. When you go in, you just see really beautiful stuff, which is nice. So I pitched to them that I would like to work with Beatrice again, and that we'd have her make a piece, kind of a replica piece of mine that I did when I was in graduate school called The Four Seasons. And so The Four Seasons came about when I was at UCLA. I was missing back home, and I knew in a really dark way that I could find a piece of home if I went to the Natural History Museum and I would see the Crow objects. So I did. I went to the Natural History Museum. I walked through the dinosaur exhibit. This is the museum. Right into the Native American galleries. Of course, I saw some Crow stuff. And I thought, this is so weird that all these people are walking around, and here I am standing next to probably like one of my answers that could be related, directly related. And I have my whole outfit just hanging in my closet, like not too far away. But these people think we're all dead. And then I love the dioramas that they have there. So I decided I want to create this feeling that I'm having and make 4 seasons. This is just one of them. This is summer. Kind of conveying that feeling that I had, where sort of everything around me is idealistic, but it's also falling apart. It's not real, but you sort of want to believe in it. And then you might, even I can be believable as maybe some sort of like Disney Indian princess or something, but that outfit is purely legitly Crow. It's Crow. You wouldn't see a Lakota person in this outfit. It's 100% Crow. So I decided, okay, Beatrice, you're gonna help me. We're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna go to Home Depot. We're gonna get AstroTurf, and we're gonna have you create your own little season there. So this is us before. And the idea was, what we did was we created her season with props and everything. And then we had a camera and everything set up. And Beatrice was in her outfit. We took her image. She helped direct with the flowers, a lot of flowers, you know, she wanted them all over the place. And this is the setup. And then what we did was when the audience came in, we had her, well, actually, this is the kind of cool thing, is I was just gonna have people go in and take photos. And then it would be beamed up onto the same floor as that exhibit. So those people could see their image, themselves being on display before they went into the Native Beauty exhibit and saw all of those other things on display. So I wanted to kind of put them in the same realm. But Beatrice totally took it over, and she gave herself the title as director. And so she would pose people, and sometimes she would pose with them. She told them what they couldn't touch, and you know what sort of things look good if you held them up. So we created that whole series there. And then our final thing that we've collaborated on thus far was at the Tacoma Art Museum. And I was asked to interact with the HALB. I hope I'm saying that right. They're Art of the American West collection. And this is what some of their stuff looks like. So I was trying to figure out how I could do this. And what I decided is I did a bunch of research. Who are the people in the collection, the majority of the people? No-brainer, mostly white males, right? There's a few white females, and there are only 4 Native American artists, and guess what? They're all men. So I was like, okay, Beatrice, let's try to make a piece that would appeal to the Halb family and see if we can get in their collection. We'll lead a tour. So basically, what we decided is for our tour that we would wear matching outfits together. The Halb family, they had kind of things about their collection, like there was no depictions of violence was a big thing. So they wouldn't collect any painting or bronze or anything that had anything to do with violence, which is totally bizarre. So we wanted to make sure that was, we doubled on that. So we made everyone wear rose-colored glasses. And then I took, through my research, all the different tribes or the Native artists that were represented in the collection. So there's all these different tribes here. And we just used the Halb's descriptors for those people. So our audience put on the name tags and the rose-colored glasses. And then we had our Native American artifacts. And then basically what we did was we chose different paintings and we recreated them live. And then I also did a kind of little mini lecture on each of the artists and their kind of aim and purpose. And then my uncle, Kevin Red Star, happens to be one of those 4 male Native American artists, so that's one of his pieces. And then we laid out all the artists that are represented in the collection, as many as I could find, that I could find images. So Beatrice laid those all out, and then we asked the audience to please pick those up. And what we did was we then went up to the second floor, and we had sort of a little Western backdrop diorama. We had our props that were used in the paintings, and we had the images of those artists. And we created this sort of visual piece. And I'm still waiting. I'm not sure if the Haub family will collect it, but I'm hoping we'll be like the first Native women artists to be in their Western art collection. And that's where I'm going to end it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is John Feodorov, and I guess I'm obviously one of the one of the 4 artists. So I do this art thing, and I'm also a musician, and I also teach up at Fairhaven College up in Bellingham. I teach art there. I guess we're known as the other Evergreen. So I'm just going to show you a few images. I thought I would just try to sum up my career in 13 minutes, give or take a minute. So what basically put me on the map initially were these this series called Totem Teddies. I did these when I was an undergrad at Cal State Long Beach in California. A lot of when I was an undergrad, I was struggling to find my voice as an artist, and perhaps many of you are kind of in that same position. Like, what is it that I have to say? And was looking at artists that like all of you have, I'm sure, artists, smart artists like Duchamp, or I was a particularly big Max Beckmann fan. Was really into the Neue Sächlichkeit painters in early Germany, early 20th century Germany. But the thing is that I realized that these people, as great artists as they are, really have nothing to do with my experience. And instead of trying to emulate them, I had to sort of look at my own life and try to find my voice that way instead of trying to replicate somebody else's. So I realized that I'm half Navajo and half white, and I grew up just outside of Los Angeles, so I didn't grow up on the reservation. I had grandparents that still lived on the reservation, Navajo reservation, and we visited them, every year. But most of my existence was kind of surrounded by, basically Jesus and Gilligan's Island. So that really, on retrospect, when I thought about it, that was really my voice. That's where my identity basically came from, and a lot of the images that a lot of the things that I associated with being Native American were things that were shown to me, in popular culture or through, Disney movies or cartoons or, except there were my grandparents who just didn't fit in with those images that I was constantly being bombarded with. So a lot of my work then, I think, deals with that sort of trying to resolve, and never quite successfully, trying to resolve this contradiction of being Native American but not growing up very Native American. At least I didn't think so at that point in my life. So the Totem Teddies were an attempt to take, a sacred animal, the bear, that had been kind of desacralized or secularized, through something like the teddy bear, turned into a product, and try to re-imbue it with its sacred powers. So that was the intent of the series. Also, I was learning some traditional native techniques and working with certain materials like pitch and porcupine quills, and so this gave me a good reason to get credit from two classes for the same project. So these are two more images of the totem teddy. The little booklet in the back of that totem teddy is the owner's manual that basically says, congratulations on your purchase of the totem teddy. You've made the most important purchase of your life. The idea behind the totem teddy was that it is a product, yes, and it would be mass marketed, but you couldn't own it, it owned you. And so if anything was going bad in your life, it was because you had somehow offended your totem teddy. And so the handy booklet then was filled with different dance steps and rituals and chants that you could do in order to appease your totem teddy. I was going to say, I was also trained as a painter, but I really don't think I was really trained as a painter at all. I think I just sort of fell into painting because I love painting. So later in my life, in early 90s, 94, these are dated, when I moved to Seattle from via Los Angeles, via Santa Fe, I was commissioned by the city of Seattle to create 3 paintings that I found out would be housed in public buildings, office buildings. And so I thought that it would make sense for these paintings to have office themes, since that's where they were going to be housed. And I wanted to play with the idea of the office as a potential sacred space. And again, it goes back kind of what the idea that I had with the totem teddies is that this would never, it was a sort of a fake attempt at resolution, because I'm not sure that these things can actually be resolved. But to somehow try to resolve spirituality with capitalism, or bureaucracy for that matter. So these were at the get-go meant as failed attempts at resolving contradictions. This is another image from that series. And then much later, so you're getting a whiz-bang tour through John Fedorov's thinking. So these are dated, mid-2000s. I had enough of getting these junk mail. I don't really see them anymore, so I guess now they're all just maybe junk email. But these junk mail advertisements for Native American-like or referenced kitsch objects in the form of plates or little statuettes. One of the companies that still makes these is called Bradford Exchange. And so what I did is I went to their website and gathered all the descriptions that they use to promote these objects and applied them to photographs of my family. So here's one, so these are actual quotes from their advertising campaign for their objects. And my relatives don't know that I used these. This is a piece that is in a different form in the exhibition that Gail curated in La Conner called Dominature. And going back to the idea of the bears, and I love the gummy bears, by the way, Corky, of utilizing the bears as a way of maybe a shortcut to getting at a much bigger issue, and playing with that, again, that juxtaposition of cute and horror at the same time in terms of pollution. This is, every time I've shown this, it's changed somehow. So now the projection is of a a coal-fired power plant on the Navajo reservation called the Navajo Generating Station. And this has begun to kind of take over as a theme in my work, I found. So I began a series of large-scale paintings, about 6 by 7 feet approximately, just called Emergence. And the reason I called it Emergence was that in Navajo mythology we have our emergence myth, which is where the kind of proto-humans, animals, deities, escape from one lower world because of some sort of tragedy or vengeance, up a sort of a reed, not unlike a Jack and the Beanstalk or something, to the next level world, right? And then something happens there, and then they have to escape that world and go, well, basically, we're living in the fourth world right now in terms of that creation myth. And watching the BP oil spill, live footage of the BP oil spill, and maybe you remember seeing that, just the oil spewing out of this pipe, from the world below, brought into mind the Navajo emergence myth for me. And again, juxtaposing something that is very much part of Navajo identity and place and how we view the world traditionally, with something as horrific as just that pipe spewing oil. And so that kind of segued into several other paintings along the same lines. So this is the second one that I did. And the third. And the fourth, or sixth, number 6. I guess there were 2. I've left 2 out, I guess. And then I think maybe I'm also have been working kind of more sort of with identity issues. I mentioned Jesus in the same breath as Gilligan's Island earlier, and sort of trying to investigate that, like what does it mean to be Native American? What sort of responsibility might that come with? What sort of baggage does it come with? Both good and bad. And so this is a piece that is, for me, it's called Hybridity. It's kind of reflecting on the fact of me being half Navajo and half white. And so in the middle section, there's this old book, I think it was put out in the 1950s. It was like written by some scoutmaster or something. And basically it was like Navajo or Native American crafts and how to do them, how to make a sacred pipe, out of wood and, which is not the way to make a sacred pipe. But the image of the young man, sort of young white man, kind of dressing up to become an Indian, was taken directly out of that book. So it was like how to be an Indian, right? And then above it, in that kind of black cloud, I took for people with diabetes, you have to take blood samples on a daily basis, and so basically that's 30 days of my blood sugar readings, and then this area here, you can't really read it, but this is a Navajo Christian prayer that I tore out of one of the hymn books that missionaries would give to Indians on the reservation. And this is a photograph that when my mother passed away, that I just did my mother's jewelry. So really a lot of kind of introspection. This video, again called Emergence. For years I had this I don't know, maybe Joseph Campbell thing going through my head of like, what could be the mythical significance of a 3-tiered birthday cake, you know, with the kind of obligatory woman jumping out from, you know, there's got to be some sort of like, you know, Jungian archetype for this, right? And so, and then I again thought about, you know, what I had done with the paintings and how I might be able to utilize again that juxtaposition of this sort of celebratory tradition that everyone is familiar with, you know, kind of coupled again with these environmental disasters. That there's the Fukushima meltdown footage of that. Earlier was the BP oil spill footage from that. And just sort of this woman dressed in black with the black balloons coming out, you know, just, hello. Anyway, we don't have to watch the whole thing. And then my last piece I wanted to show you. This was done for the show that Wendy curated at Bumper Shoot a couple years ago. A couple years ago, was it?
It says 2014, right?
Oh, last year. So that's why you should date your slides. And this was a piece called Shrine to Your New God. And I wanted it to be somewhat, you know, perhaps provocative in the sense like, what do you mean I don't need a new God? But that, again, for me, it kind of goes back to what I was doing, I think, with the totem teddies, is trying to kind of resolve this, you know, the beadwork that I did, and I'm a terrible beader. I was cursing the whole time that I was doing this beadwork. But, you know, one side says sacred and the other side says profane, right? And that sort of balance, and the video of the mouth sipping from both of those cans, you know, and so that there's where the sacred is. It's the mixture of the sacred and profane. There's just a short little, if I can get it to work, a short little video to kind of get a sense of, maybe, of how it, yeah, there we go. So there were these kind of fetishes that I created spinning on rotisserie motors around it. As you, come on, zoom in. There we go. So you can see there's the mouth sucking the sacred and profane. And then the, above it, because anything sacred that's Native American has to somehow have an eagle, right? Above it was a projection of an eagle circling. And these are just close-ups of those fetish figures. And that's it. Thanks.